Hearts are a recurring yet under-discussed detail in A Song of Ice and Fire, appearing in many different, seemingly unrelated contexts. The heart of the undying, the stallion's heart, the heart of winter, the Sansa's heart. It could be that it's just a coincidence, but many of the instances of the hearts seem to actually be connected in some way, both to each other and to the magical plotline of the story. So, what's with the hearts? Before we start, remember that if you like my content, like, subscribe and share so that more people can see it. Make sure to click the notification button so that you never miss a new video. The first huge mention of hearts comes from Bran's coma dream. Finally he looked north. He saw the wall shining like blue crystal, and his bastard brother Jon sleeping alone in a cold bed, his skin growing pale and hard as the memory of all warmth fled from him. And he looked past the wall, past endless forests cloaked in snow, past the frozen shore and the great blue-white rivers of ice, and the dead plains where nothing grew or lived. North and north and north he looked, to the curtain of light at the end of the world, and then beyond that curtain. He looked deep into the heart of winter, and then he cried out afraid, and the heat of his tears burned on his cheeks. Now you know, the crow whispered as it sat on his shoulder. Now you know why you must live. Why? Bran said, not understanding. Falling. Because winter is coming. The heart of winter that Bran sees is not described, though, judging by his reaction, it's terrifying. The three-eyed crow, upon looking into the heart of winter himself, says that Bran must live because winter is coming. The house words of House Stark seem to be something more than just a warning about the harshness of winter. It is likely that they actually warn about the others, who either originate from the heart of winter, draw power from it, or both. Another heart appears in Dany's chapters in Vaes Dothrak when she eats a stallion's heart in a Dothraki ritual. The heart of a stallion would make her son strong and swift and fearless, or so the Dothraki believed. But only if the mother could eat it all. If she choked on the blood or retched up the flesh, the omens were less favorable. The child might be stillborn, or comfort weak, deformed, or female. When Dany succeeds, the Doshkalin give her a prophecy. I have seen his face, and heard the thunder of his hoofs, she proclaimed in a thin, wavery voice. The thunder of his hoofs, the others chorused. As swift as the wind he rides, and behind him his Kalasar covers the earth, men without numbers, with araks shining in their hands like blades of razor grass. Fierce as a storm this prince will be. His enemies will tremble before him, and their wives will weep tears of blood and rend their flesh in grief. The bells in his hair will sing his coming, and the milkmen in the stone tents will fear his name. The old woman trembled and looked at Dany almost as if she were afraid. The prince is riding, and he shall be the stallion who mounts the world. The stallion who mounts the world, the onlookers cried in echo, until the night rang to the sound of their voices. Jorah later explains what's the deal with that prophecy. What does it mean, she asked. What is this stallion? Everyone was shouting it at me, but I don't understand. The stallion is the Khal of Khals promised in an ancient prophecy, child. He will unite the Dothraki into a single Khalasar and ride to the ends of earth. Or so it was promised. All the people of the world will be his herd. It's interesting to note that the stallion shall ride to the ends of earth. The Dothraki famously never crossed seawater, believing it to be poisoned. But that they would be willing to ride to the ends of earth implies that perhaps, for the stallion who mounts the world, they would cross the poisoned water. Some of them actually did. And at the very end of the world lies none other than the heart of winter. Jorah also tells Dany that the Dothraki have a certain apocalyptic prophecy. Down in the Shadowlands beyond Ashai, they say they are oceans of ghost grass, taller than a man on horseback, with stalks as pale as milk grass. It murders all other grass and glows in the dark with the spirits of the damned. The Dothraki claim that someday ghost grass will cover the entire world, and then all life will end. The Long Night was an occurrence that happened not only in Westeros, but also in Essos and cultures around the entire Planetos, have a prophecy about a hero that will repel the forces of darkness. The last hero, the prince that was promised, Azor Ahai, Hercon the hero, Yentar, Neferion, Eldrick Shadow Chaser, and many others. It seems that the stallion who mounts the world is simply a Dothraki version of that prophecy. The grass that shall cover all the earth is white, like snow. This seems to be a hint that the Dothraki will be instrumental to the fight against the others, and perhaps they might ride alongside Daenerys to the heart of winter, to the ends of earth, across the poisoned water. The tale of the prophesied hero, or at least one of them, also has to do with hearts. Do you know the tale of the forging of Lightbringer? I shall tell it to you. It was a time when darkness lay heavy on the world. To oppose it, the hero must have a hero's blade, like none that had ever been. And so for 30 days and 30 nights, Azor Ahai labored sleepless in the temple, forging a blade in the sacred fires. Hit and hammer and fold, oh yes, until the sword was done. Yet when he plunged it into water to temper the steel, it burst asunder. Being a hero, it was not for him to shrug and go in search of excellent grapes such as these, so again he began. The second time it took him 50 days and 50 nights, and the sword seemed ever finer than the first. Azor Ahai captured a lion to temper the blade by plunging it through the beast's red heart, but once more the steel shattered and split. Great was his woe and great was his sorrow then, for he knew what he must do. 100 days and 100 nights he labored on the third blade, and as it glowed white hot in the sacred fires, he summoned his wife. Nissa Nissa, he said to her, for that was her name. Bear your breast and know that I love you best of all that is in this world. She did this thing, why I cannot say, and Azor Ahai thrust the smoking sword through her living heart. It is said that her cry of anguish and ecstasy left a crack across the face of the moon, but her blood and her soul and her strength and her courage all went into the steel. Such is the tale of the forging of Lightbringer, the red sword of heroes. Azor Ahai tempered his sword in the heart of his beloved wife, Nissa Nissa. A metaphorical forging of a sword from a heart happens in a Game of Thrones. Bring my axe, Dany commanded her handmaids. Something in her voice made them run. Said Jorah to Haram, my queen, Drogo will have no use for dragon's eggs in the Nightlands. Better to sell them in Ashai. Sell one and we can buy a ship to take us back to the Free Cities. Sell all three and you will be a wealthy woman all your days. They were not given to me to sell, Dany told him. She climbed the pyre herself to place the eggs around her sun and stars, the black beside his heart, under his arm, the green beside his head, a braid coiled around it, the cream and gold down between his legs. When she kissed him for the last time, Dany could taste the sweetness of the oil on his lips. She heard a crack, the sound of shattering stone. The platform of wood and brush and grass began to shift and collapse in upon itself. Bits of burning wood slid down at her, and Dany was showered with ash and ciders. And something else came crashing down, bouncing and rolling, to land at her feet. A chunk of curved rock, pale and veined with gold, broken and smoking. The roaring filled the world, yet dimly through the firefall, Dany heard women shriek and children cry out in wonder. Only death can pay for life. And there came a second crack, loud and sharp as thunder, and the smoke stirred and whirled around her, and the pyre shifted, the logs exploding as the fire touched their secret hearts. She heard the screams of frightened horses, and the voices of the Dothraki rise in shouts of fear and terror, and Ser Jorah calling her name and cursing. No, she wanted to shout to him. No, my good knight, do not fear for me. The fire is mine. I am Daenerys Stormborn, daughter of dragons, bride of dragons, mother of dragons. Don't you see? Don't you see? With a belch of flame and smoke that reached 50 feet into the sky, the pyre collapsed and came down around her. Unafraid, Dany stepped forward into the firestorm, calling to her children. The third crack was as loud and sharp as the breaking of the world. Dany placed Drogon's egg next to Drogo's heart, and Drogon is the third dragon to be born, just like Lightbringer was forged on the third attempt. Thus, Drogon is the metaphorical sword, with Drogo as Nissa Nissa and Dany as Azor Ahai. The myth repeated itself. Another heart appears in A Clash of Kings, when Dany visits the warlocks of Karth, the Undying. They seem to actually be dead in some way, and they are powered by a heart. A long stone table filled this room. Above it floated a human heart, swollen and blue with corruption, yet still alive. It beat, a deep ponderous drop of sound, and each pulse sent out a wash of indigo light. The figures around the table were no more than blue shadows. As Dany walked to the empty chair at the foot of the table, they did not stir, nor speak, nor turn to face her. There was no sound but the slow, deep beat of the rotting heart. "Mother of dragons," came a voice, part whisper and part moan. "Dragons, dragons, dragons." Other voices echoed in the gloom. Some were male and some female. One spoke with the timbre of a child. The floating heart pulsed from dimness to darkness. It was hard to summon the will to speak, to recall the words she had practiced so assiduously. "I am Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, Queen of the 7 Kingdoms of Westeros. Do they hear me? Why don't they move?" She sat, folding her hands in her lap. "Grant me your counsel, and speak to me with the wisdom of those who have conquered death." Through the indigo murk, she could make out the wizened features of the Undying One to her right, an old man, wrinkled and hairless. His flesh was a rip violet blue, his lips and nails bluer still, so dark they were almost black. And the whites of his eyes were blue. They stared unseeing at the ancient woman on the opposite side of the table, whose gown of pale silk had rotten on her body. One withered breast was left bare in the Carthian manner, to show a pointed blue nipple hard as leather. "She is not breathing." Then I listened to the silence. "None of them are breathing, and they do not move, and those eyes see nothing. Could it be that the Undying Ones were dead?" Her answer was a whisper as thin as a mouse whisker. "We live, live, live," it sounded. Myriad other voices whispered echoes. And no, 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 no. There seems to be an uncanny resemblance between the others and the Undying. They are dead in some way, but not quite. Just like the others are dead, in some way, but not quite. After Dany hears their prophecies, they suddenly surround her, trying to take away her life forces for themselves until Drogon comes to the rescue. But then black wings buffet her around the head, and a scream of fury cut through the indigo air, and suddenly the visions were gone, ripped away, and Dany's gasp turned to horror. The Undying were all around her, blue and cold, whispering as they reached for her, pulling, stroking, tugging at her clothes, touching her with their dry, cold hands, twinning their fingers through her hair. All the strength had left her limbs. She could not move. Even her heart had ceased to beat. She felt a hand on her bare breast, twisting her nipple. Teeth found the soft skin of her throat. A mouth descended on one eye, licking, sucking, biting. Then indigo turned to orange and whispered turned to screams. Her heart was pounding, racing, the hands and mouth were gone. Heat washed over her skin, and Dany blinked at a sudden glare. Perched above her, the dragon spread his wings and tore at the terrible dark heart, ripping the rotten flesh to ribbons, and when his head snapped forward, fire flew from his open jaws, bright and hot. She could hear the shrieks of the Undying as they burned, their high, thin, papery voices crying out in Tanja's long death. Their flesh was crumbling parchment, their bones dry wood soaked in tallow. They danced as the flames consumed them. They staggered and writhed and spun and raised blazing hands on high, their fingers bright as torches. Dany pushed herself to her feet and bullied through them. They were light as air, no more than husks. And they fell at a touch. The whole room was ablaze by the time she reached the door. "Drogon," she called, and he flew to her through the fire. After the Undying's heart is burned, they die. In A Storm of Swords, on the night before Dany is to be unsullied, she has a very interesting dream. That night she dreamed that she was Rhaegar, riding to the Trident. But she was mounted on a dragon, not a horse. When she saw the usurper's rebel host across the river, they were armored all in ice, as she bathed them in dragon fire, and they melted away like dew, and turned the Trident into a torrent. Some small part of her knew that she was dreaming, but another part exulted. This is how it was meant to be. The other was a nightmare, and I have only now awakened. She woke suddenly in the darkness of her cabin, still flushed with triumph. Dany dreams of herself as Rhaegar fighting on the Trident, but her opponents are armored in ice, and she is on dragonback. Ice, of course, brings connotations with the others, who are ice zombies. And it seems like, unlike in the show, their march won't end in Winterfell, but they might make it as far as to the Trident. It's not a coincidence that Dany has this dream right before her maneuver with Krasnys Monaclos. The Unsullied are enslaved, and the army of the Death consists of the Whites enslaved after death, there to do the bidding of the others. By burning Krasnys, Dany liberates the Unsullied, and by burning the others, Whites may also be liberated from that metaphorical slavery. The slavers themselves are thematically linked to ice. In The Dance with Dragons, Dany has a dream in which his dad rapes her, and his manhood is cold as ice. So the timing of Dany's dream and that connection means that she will be instrumental in defeating them, contrary to what some people claim. She won't just die before that plot point happens, and won't just be a sacrificial lamb. Let's gather all the elements into one and think about what they mean, what's their connection, and if they say something about the future of the story. Azor Ahai forges his sword by plunging it into Nissa heart. Bran sees the heart of winter from which the others originate. Dany eats the stallion's heart, and her son is prophesied to be the stallion who mounts the world. Dany forges Lightbringer, Drogon, by sacrificing the life of Drogo on the funeral pyre. From the egg placed next to his heart, Drogon burns the heart of the Undying. That's definitely too many hearts for it to be a coincidence, especially since all of those are so nicely connected. We see that prophecies are not always literal and can be fulfilled metaphorically, as with Dany metaphorically forging Lightbringer. As such, my theory is that all of these hearts are the answer to how to defeat the others. When Dany eats the stallion's heart, her son is prophesied to be the Dothraki variant of Azor Ahai, stallion who mounts the world, who is going to ride to the ends of earth. But curiously, the Doshkalin look at Dany with fear, pointing that it is not Rhaego but Dany who is the stallion. They miss that because, in Dothraki's patriarchal society, no one ever looked for a girl. They have that in common with Westerosi and with ASOIAF fandom. It is the deaths of Drogo and Rhaego that allow her to wake the dragons from stone, and Drogon is the third one to be born, just like Lightbringer is forged on the third attempt. Dany and Drogon later defeat the undead warlocks by destroying their heart. So a stallion who mounts the world devours the heart, or alternatively, the heart gives the necessary strength to the stallion who mounts the world, so that he, or rather she, might ride till the ends of earth to the heart of winter, and the heart of winter will be destroyed by Lightbringer, Drogon, just like he destroyed the heart of the Undying. Lightbringer will be tempered in the heart of winter, just like the original one was tempered in the heart of Nissa, and thus others will be defeated. Of course, it's not going to be an easy task. In the TV show, all that needed to be done was stabbing the right guy using a funny trick, but the journey to the hearts of winter will be long, arduous, and extremely dangerous. As of now, dragons cannot pass beyond the wall either, but should the wall fall, as many people predict, it will probably be possible. This many hearts having this many connections seems too convenient for it to be a coincidence. All of these hearts are likely the key towards defeating the others, the existential threat faced by all of humanity, not just Westeros. To destroy the others, Lightbringer might temper itself in its heart. And that Lightbringer is Drogon, wielded by Azor Ahai, Daenerys. Thanks for watching. Remember that if you like my content, like, subscribe and share so that more people can see it. Make sure to click the notification button so that you never miss a new video.